Hey everybody, so this is a quick look at my Sherman Firefly mock-up that I did from probably like about a year ago at this point. And it was pretty close to what ended up in the game, except I used a different hull. I used a more modern looking, newer hull. I mistakenly kept the machine gun port in there, which I probably should have removed because that wasn't accurate. But overall, it was pretty close. On the real version, in World of Tanks terms, they put an armor applique on the side of the upper turret and another armor applique on the side of the tank, in addition to the one that's to the front. But other than that, I think the stats were pretty close. My speed limit was similar. The same hull armor, about 50. Turret was about 75. But all in all, it's using a 17-pounder gun. And I kind of wish they would have used my hull. I think my hull looks better than the one they went with, which is similar, more similar to just the stock M4 hull. But you can't get everything you want. And Wargaming, they could have had me on as consultant, could have got this right, but instead they went their own path. This probably got signed off by Serb, and it's unfortunate, but the in-game Firefly didn't turn out as well as the Capt Canada preview from over a year ago. It only took them a year to get the Firefly in there, one of the most important tanks in World War II. But finally, it's in there. Good job, Serb. Good job, World of Tanks. You are champs.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel.
Reviews. I am still in my WoT vacation for probably another week. I'm just taking a break from the game, but I saw that the British medium TDs had all rolled out onto the test server, so I thought I would make a video of some of the tanks that you'll be seeing in the upcoming patch of 9.5. So, this is the M2 American Lend-Lease something or other tank, the British with a German cross on it. I'm not sure why it has a German cross on it, but maybe that's a bug. Probably is a bug since it's not German. Anyway, that's what this guy looks like. It's only tier 2, so I'm not going to go through any of the stats on it or anything. Just give you a look what it looks like. Nothing too major. Looks like it'll be pretty fast. Looks like it'll turn pretty well. And it'll have little machine gun looking things on it. Yeah, 50 pen, 40 damage. Shoots really fast. Aims really quick. Not very accurate. So in a nutshell, that's what you're going to get with this little bugger. Alright, moving on to the next tank. We have the Stuart at tier 3. Which looks very much like the American version. With the exception is that you'll be able to have a 2-pounder gun, which is probably the gun I'd use. But since the stats for all these things are fluctuating and it will be changing in some cases quite dramatically, I'm not going to go through any of the stats on pretty much any of these tanks. Just generically just going to look at what they look like and kind of what their stats are, but not as so much as if they're going to be stuck that way in full reality when they actually go live. So, good looking little tank, not very big, probably pretty quick. See its top speed says 58, could go up, could go down. It probably won't be very well armored. It may not turn very great because the other Stuarts, I didn't find they were that maneuverable, but we'll have to see how that pans out. But overall, you'll probably be pretty happy with it. I didn't mind the Stuarts when I drove them back in the day, so hopefully when they get the new motion physics in 2017, you'll see how these things handle when things change up a little bit. And next rolling in at tier 4, we have the Grand. Look at this beautiful little beast. As you can see, the main chassis is mostly based on an M3. You look at the front of a Ram 2, it looks very much like this. And you've got the big hull cannon and the completely obsolete top cannon, because why would you shoot the top cannon? You wouldn't want that functionality. So, much like the M3 Elite, you really only get to shoot this cannon in the hull. You're going to look at a tank that's very tall. You're going to get, if you're coming over rises or you're trying to blade mildly aggressively, you're going to have issues with this thing peeking over, just like the M3 Elite. So, you'll probably want to play this thing as more a standoff, covering, kill zone type tank. More like a tank destroyer than probably a flanking medium tank, because you don't have the flexibility of using your turret. You only have your big hull gun here, which happens to be this gun. This is the gun that I would probably use. It has a very fast rate of fire, If these stats hold true, it's going to be okay aim time, bad accuracy, kind of cruddy damage, but decent penetration. So all in all, at tier 4, it's basically an M3 Lee with modified turret in the top here that is actually a fair chunk bigger, but maybe not as tall as a regular M3 Lee. But taking a look at it in HD, looks pretty nice. Looks like they went to town on making all the rivets with normal maps, so that looks pretty cool. And all in all, I'm not really looking forward to driving this tank much, since I didn't really like the M3 Lee that much. Like the gun on it's not bad at all, but we'll just have to see how this thing pans out, because it honestly does half as much damage as as a lot of other tier 4 TDs. So we'll have to see how it does in battle, but the penetration's good, so we'll just have to see. Next, we have the Sherman 3, and as you can see, the hull is more like an Easy 8. It has a pretty decent slope on it. Not a whole ton of armor, only 50 in front, if that's actually going to stay at 50. But overall general shape looks to be pretty close to what an M4 looks like. You have the upgraded turret that looks pretty much exactly like you get on the M4. The stock turret looking like a base stock turret. And then gun-wise, pretty much looks like you pretty much got about 3 choices you could use that wouldn't suck too terribly. The 6-pounder gun, same gun as you have in an M3 Lee, but stuck into this guy. You got the big derp gun, and then you got the M1A1 76mm, which is, if you played the game at all, very similar to the same gun that's on many tanks along many lines of the Americans. So overall, not too big. Well, it's kind of tall, but it's not the biggest tank in the world. You're not going to block too much with the armor. But at the end of the day, the I don't know. The Sherman's, it's a pretty decent little tank. I don't mind it. And you'll probably have a tank that is fairly quick with not very great armor. Your gun depression, if it holds true, it'll probably still be like -9, -10. With the 6-pounder, it might be more inferior, but I'm not sure. But look for it to be very similar to the M4. That is the same in the American branch, except that the American M4 has the older looking hull. The hull that is also shared currently on the Sherman Firefly, which is a bit of a disappointment for myself. Alright, so here we go. This is the moment. This is the moment that you get to see what the actual Firefly looks like in the 9.5 common test server compared to what I created probably about a year ago at this point, what I've imagined that the Firefly would look like. So some of the commonalities is they added these bolt-on, welded-on armor pieces to the side. I was correct with that. The difference between my Firefly and this Firefly is they chose to use this older hull. Whether it's older, actually, it might not be older, but it looks more inferior. It looks more like just a stock M4 hull, which is kind of unfortunate. I think if you look at my Firefly video, you can see it uses the hull that is more similar to this one here, but using this turret. So you can see another armor applique here to protect some of the crew. The model is definitely like of high quality and stuff. I really like that. I think it's kind of unfortunate that you don't get the better looking hull, because I definitely prefer the hull on the Sherman 3, and I kind of wish that would have carried over onto this Firefly. But again, like in 2016 or 2019, you'll probably see the alternative hulls come in for the game in the big World 7 engine. So again, we're going to look at a tank that's not superly mobile. You're going to lose a bunch of gun depression because this gun was so big that it was hard to ram it inside the smaller turret. So look at -5, maybe -6 at best. And you're going to be getting the 17-pounder gun, which is blessed with a pretty decent rate of fire. 171 pen and then 150 damage. This is the bog standard 17-pounder gun you get in this game. I don't particularly think this gun is that fantastic. If it was, I don't know. I honestly think that this gun should do more upwards of about 200 damage, and it should probably be a little bit more closer to the on par of what the Pershing had. A little bit less of the damage, but it definitely packed the punch and was the most used gun and the best gun, basically, that the British had on any of their tanks. And that's why it was used on the Sherman Firefly. It was used on the Archer. It was used on the Achilles. It was the gun. This was the gun that actually made the Germans afraid, and why they actually had to paint the end of the barrels a certain color to try and make it look like it was a shorter barrel. And these were the ones that they would shoot at first because they could actually penetrate the front of a Panther and the front of a Tiger, and maybe not the front of a King Tiger, but this was the feared gun, and I don't really get the fear of the 17-pounder in this game. Yes, it does shoot fast, and that's great, but this gun kind of suffers from the same problems as the L70, in my opinion, which had one-shot kill capabilities in actuality. I know this game's an arcade game, it's World of Tanks, but still, I still think that this gun and the L70 are very, very underserved with the amount of damage they put out, and this gun isn't very accurate either, whereas the L70 is. But I think those two guns were very highly regarded in the war, and in World of Tanks, I think they've kind of relegated them to a secondary status. I don't think they're entirely doing justice, I guess, to how great they were and how feared they were in real life. So this is the Firefly. You're going to look at a tank that has probably middling armor. You're not going to bounce much of anything, maybe off the gun mantlet. You're going to have a fairly tall tank that is going to have not so great mobility. Like you see, you got lobbed off about 10 kph on the speed for whatever reason. I guess the 17-pounder is just so heavy. And then you've got some weird arbitrary value for the view range. Don't know what that's going to be in the end, so who knows. So all in all, I think this thing is going to have to probably play more like a tank destroyer with kind of crappy-ish accuracy. This was the one I was looking forward to the most, and honestly, like, obviously haven't played it yet, but yeah, I wish it looked a little bit different, and I wish the 17-pounder was a little bit more super duper, but it's not. So we'll jump on to the next tank. All right, this is the Archer. This is the Tier 5 tank destroyer based on the Valentine chassis. Actually goes a lot faster in reverse, much like that artillery piece that drives around in reverse everywhere. Again, you have the 17-pounder gun, which you'll be very familiar with on virtually every other tank in this line, since it's carried over on pretty much all of them. So you're going to have a tank that fires really quick, doesn't do a lot of damage, is mildly accurate, and shoots really fast. So if you're used to a Jagdpanzer IV, I think you'll feel right at home with this little guy. And then next down the line, we have the Achilles. A little bit more interested in this one. This one is based on the M10 Wolverine, but adapted by our friends in England to use the 17-pounder gun. So looks very similar, except this back piece is a fair bit different. You've got a 50 cal on top because you need one, and you can see that the barrel right at the end, the muzzle brake, has this kind of ring, kind of like a bracer around the end of the barrel. And other than that, there's not too much difference visually between the Achilles and the Wolverine. Both of them are M10s. It's just one of them has a 17-pounder and one of them has it's like a 3-pounder barrel, or 3 something or other. The Wolverine had a weird gun in real life. I think in this game they let you put on the 76mm high velocity gun, which I think probably made it onto the M10 at some point, but not in as big a numbers as the original gun. But onto the Achilles. Looks like it'll be fairly maneuverable. It's not going to weigh too much. The armor's going to bounce some stuff sometimes. The turret may bounce stuff off the mantlet. It's probably the best armor on the tank right there. And again, you're going to get a fairly fast firing tank with a slow moving turret, and probably not going to do more than 150 damage like all the rest of them. So, that's the Achilles. Got an open top tank, so you're going to watch out for artillery dropping shells in the top. Okay, so at tier 7 we've got a Challenger. This is again using the 70-pounder gun, which was the gun, and instead it's being placed inside what looks like a very similar to a TOG turret, and that's kind of clamped down onto a Comet or Cromwell chassis. It may say in the description. We'll just see if I can find it in the... Where is it? Where are you? We'll do it from the tech tree. Dun, da, da, da. Da, 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 da. Created in 1942 on the chassis of the Cromwell. I was right, but not maybe exact enough. So, what do you got here? You got something with a huge turret. Looks pretty damn tall. And you've got the 17-pounder gun. You're going to have a pretty decent top speed, but your turret traverse speed looks to be pretty bad. If that actually holds true, who knows if it will. But at the end of the day, I don't particularly think this one is going to be super duper strong, considering it only does 150 damage a shot when you have other tier 7 tank destroyers that can do 800 damage a shot. But it's going to play very differently. It's going to be more like a rapid fire TD, so you'll just have to see how well it does. And curiously enough, we've got a huge accuracy buff to 0.34 from what you get on the Firefly. Now, rolling in at tier 8, we have the Charioteer, which is actually a pretty neat looking little tank. This one seems to be based on the Comet chassis with a weird looking turret. This is the only turret you can choose from on this one, but it will be a TD with a turret as well as the last one. And instead of using the 17-pounder, they have lobbed on a tier 10 gun. So you've got about 280 pen, 400 damage. Basically the same gun you get in the Centurion 7.1 with inferior accuracy and inferior aim time. But those stats subject to change, so don't hold them to that count. So we got 52 top speed, and it looks like it's going to have pretty garbagey armor. You're not going to bounce practically anything with that. Your turret armor is not very strong at all. So this is going to be a very kind of secondary fire tank. You're going to want to probably might have decent gun depression. Looks like it's got a lot of space to aim down, but we'll have to see about that. Not sure about the gun depression. Hopefully it'll be good. If not, then we'll have to see how this is going to be played. But it is, if it's based on the Comet, it may be fast enough to get around the battlefield, and it's fairly accurate, does an okay amount of damage, but penetration values are pretty good for stock rounds. I'm actually looking more forward to this one than the previous one. So moving on to tier 9, this is the FE 4004 Conway. As you can see, it's very tall. It's still relatively skinny, and looks like it's riding on the same chassis as a Centurion. But it has this big knobby looking turret. I don't know what it is with the British and wanting to put on these big boxy looking flat turrets. It's like they're the only nation that didn't learn in the war that sloping was good. But from the looks of it, they actually did bolt on some armor to it, so it's got about 132, if that's accurate at all. And you got the same kind of hull from you get from Centurion, which doesn't really bounce a heck of a lot unless you're shooting the sides of the tracks, and the tracks eat the shots. Looking at a tank that probably isn't going to be too extraordinarily fast. And taking a look at the gun, you don't get any choices of guns or turrets, so you pretty much just get this gun, which looks pretty similar to what you get on the Conqueror, with an enhanced rate of fire and good aim time and good accuracy. But again, subject to change if they just decide that it's too powerful or it can't kill IS-7s. If it's killing IS-7s too quickly, then they don't want to buff the IS-7 again, then they'll probably just debuff this. So, this is the Conway leading up to the most coolest tank in the game. Coming up next. All right, here it is, the FE 4005 Stage 2. And again, looks like it's based on the Centurion. In the hull, the turret is this really angular looking block, big block shape. You could probably use this to, I don't know, some makeshift barn. You could put some cows in there. I would kind of like to see what a person would look like in scale to this thing, because it looks quite big, but the size of that door doesn't make it actually feel that big. This tank will play quite similarly to the Waffenträger, because it has virtually no armor. People will be able to shoot a HE through your turret and devastate you pretty badly, I imagine, because it has virtually 0. It's like 14. It's got, I think, a couple less than a Hellcat. So if you drive a Hellcat and you are used to how that thing takes module damage, then you'll be right at home driving this FV 4005. Taking a look at the gun as it currently sits, you've got 310 for your penetration, you've got your Hesh rounds for 230, and then 1150 damage with AP, and then if your Hesh does pen, you've got about 1800. Not super accurate, pretty long aim time. You're going to have to be fairly careful. You're a support tank, and you will not be assaulting people directly because they will rip through you. If you get up close to a DPM tank, it's going to be able to rip you up pretty quick. If these hit points hold true, you don't have a heck of a lot. So again, this is the same kind of characteristics as the Waffenträger E100. You got a glass cannon that does not take rounds very well, but it can dish out damage when it needs to pop around the corner and then reload for, 20-25 seconds. So is this tank good for gameplay? I don't know. If you got an SU-152 at tier 7 that can do 800, why not have one at tier 10 that can do 1800? So this is what we got for 9.5, and who knows, they might be fun. I'm not too sure. I'm still on my World of Tanks break, so in about a week's time I will be coming back and playing again. And 9.5, I'm not sure when it's actually going to roll out. It sounds like you're not going to get too much other than these tanks and those minimap changes. All the game mechanic-y type stuff that would actually make the game better is still being put off. And even though it was promised, is coming later. So, thank you for watching my 9.5 preview of the British tanks.